Hi, it's Chris Watkin here, and I'm with one of London's best well-known and the most award-winning estate and letting agent in London, Charlie Perdios from Anthony Pepe. Thanks for joining me today. For the benefit of people watching, I'd like to talk about your story as an estate agent, why you got into estate agency, the ups and the downs, and where you are now in 2020. So the people learning who are probably on different journeys themselves as estate agents can learn from you, to learn from your mistakes and also gain the knowledge and your insight. Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah.
Good stuff.
Pleasure.
Charlie, when did you first become an estate agent?
So, I became an estate agent back in 2001.
Okay.
And my story is probably different to quite a lot of people's stories. I actually started off as an accountant, believe it or not.
Okay.
But I was involved quite a bit in property. And I had a good friend of mine, Ari Theodoru, who is now my business partner at Anthony Pepe, still my business partner. And we were good friends. We used to go to Arsenal every week, and we'd speak about property a lot. And I used to complain about not liking accountancy. And one day he said to me, "Why don't we open an estate agency? You know, I made X amount last year. I think we could do it." And I sort of dismissed it at first, but then started thinking
How old
about
were you
it.
at this point?
I was probably about 25.
Okay.
I was about 25 at that time.
So had you qualified to be an accountant by now?
Yes. I'd done all the exams, and I was working as an accountant in London. And at that point, I'd moved back to North London, and I just couldn't see myself. I couldn't see a future in it. Although there have been times in the past I thought, bloody hell, I wish I stayed in accountancy. You know, I've said that quite a few times, especially in the last sort of 5, 6 years. But Ari convinced me in the end, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this.
Were you married at this point, or have it?
I was married. No, I wasn't married. I was engaged. I got married. Actually, I did just get married just before I opened Anthony Pepe.
Okay,
Yes.
so what did your other half think to the fact is that you were basically being in a qualified accountancy position, 2001, 2000, things were going okay in the UK economy?
No, she was supportive because she knew that she supported me doing something that I wanted to do. I was in a fortunate position as well where I was a landlord as well at that time. So I was an accountant. I looked around and I thought, well, everyone that's making money is in property. To be honest with you, that was my initial motivation. But then, as soon as I started in agency, so I started working for a small company. Well, I started running actually a small company on the side, and I was still an accountant. And that's when I realised I could do this, and it wasn't that hard. And during that time, I had decided to open an estate agency with Ari,
Okay.
and that's when the idea was sort of born, basically. So I always knew I had one eye on opening my own agency, um, and it was interesting because I hadn't been in a corporate, I hadn't worked for a corporate. I had a totally different view of the estate agency world.
Did you have any fears opening your own estate agency?
I did because I hadn't obviously, I hadn't been in the industry for a long time before. I didn't have much sales experience. It was mainly lettings when I actually opened Anthony Pepe, and I remember actually. So we were looking for an agency within our own sort of brand, um, and we even looked at Winkworth franchises as well, but we didn't do that because we didn't feel that we felt that the areas were too small to operate in. And then, really, at the last minute, we were going to open up on a premises under our own names, and then we found that Anthony Pepe was available for sale. So Anthony Pepe was an existing business. It was established in 1987, but it was a small agency, reputable, but probably seventh or eighth best agency in Palmer's Green at the time. There were lots of better agencies at the time. We took it over. It had 6 properties on the books for sale, 2 properties under management, and we basically, there was no sort of magic formula the first year. We basically worked our asses off. But going back to your question, did I have any fear? Yes, because as soon as we started, Ari came and said to me, "Well, actually, I'm not going to leave the job I was in. Right now, I've got really good pipelines. I'm going to stay a couple of months. Is it all right if I join in a couple of months? And I was like, well, okay then. So I was 2, 3 months there on my own, and it was a baptism of fire basically.
How did you feel that your friend almost let you down at the start?
Um, well, I didn't feel like he let me down because we sort of discussed it before and I agreed to it. But
Okay, okay. But you were on your own.
I was on my own. It was a lot of setting up of the business. There were a lot of ups and downs even right at the beginning. I remember after 5 days we got broken into, all our computers were stolen, and we'd lost all the work we'd done. It wasn't backed up in the clouds back then, and we were devastated. But we just got on with it, and it made us double down and work even harder to get where we were. And it was pure hard work really in the first year.
Okay. Just looking at the first year, what would you have done differently in your first year? But I don't want you to, just your first year. From what you know now, what would you have done differently in your first year?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't have done anything differently. The first year was fantastic.
Okay.
It felt like everything clicked into place.
But you were in a good market. 2001 in London was
Well,
flying.
by the time we opened was the end of 2003, 2004. So this
Okay.
process
It's
went
still
over.
a good market.
So it was a very good market. It was a good time to get stock on as well. And it was unlike all the other offices I've opened subsequent to the first office. It was a good time. So we were able to basically, and I think this is, we've never managed to replicate this on with the other 4 offices, but we managed to get the most market share within 1 year. And that was through hard work, determination, good marketing, really getting out there and being part of the community. And very, very quickly, we managed to sort of cement ourselves as the main agent. And a lot of other agents were not very happy. Some of them closed down, some big agents. Best Weaves closed down, Hearts, Lanes. We closed down a lot of offices. We were quite, relentless and ruthless in those early days, basically. So I wouldn't have changed anything then, definitely. Not the first year.
In those first year, I mean, what were you, when you decided to become an estate agent, because you didn't like, there's a lot of people out there that don't like their job, and everyone says, I love property, but my missus loves cooking, but it doesn't make she's going to
No.
make a good restaurant. What were your hopes and dreams about setting up an estate agency? Was it the money?
I was very motivated by money, yes, because I had that accountancy background, so I had a good, solid business background. So I was always focused on the figures and the stats. I was always analysing what we were doing, and growing the business and becoming more profitable and increasing the turnover and doing more sales. And we were always looking at our figures, trying to improve every single aspect of the business. That for me was a huge motivation, sort of beating yourself, beating your last PB. That really sort of made us do that extra little bit and move forward.
How did your fiance feel the fact that in this first year, you were putting in stupid hours? Were you married by this time?
I was married, but she was a lawyer, so she was putting in stupid hours as well, so it was actually okay. So we were both working very hard in those days, 6 days a week. Be lucky if we had a holiday in the first sort of 3 years. If we took a Saturday off together, it was probably the FA Cup final. That's what it was,
I mean, does your partner support the Scum? Sorry, Arsenal.
She actually does support the Scum. Yeah, she supports Tottenham.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Fantastic.
Got you on that one.
just for the record, I don't
But my
support...
son supports Arsenal.
Okay, Scum,
Yeah.
yes. Just for the record, I don't follow any football team.
Right. Okay.
It's just that I promised my next door neighbour that whenever the word Arsenal Scum is mentioned, I use the same word
Okay.
Scum.
Okay. Well, we are doing a bit better than.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but great for you.
Yeah.
Great for you. I must admit, I came to your office about 4 or 5 years ago, and your office is just round the corner from the old
That's
Highbury,
exactly
isn't it?
Highbury, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I remember these things. There you go. So we're 2003, we opened in 2004, things are going quite well. 2005, 6, there was a bit of a dip in the market in '06, not much of a dip, but then it kicked on again, didn't it?
Yeah, we were still growing. So, I always say it now, when the market goes down, unless you've got 100% share, you can always outdo the market. You can always grow unless you've
I
just
mean,
saturated your
okay,
market. So we were still always growing
what were
at
you
that point.
actually doing give me some actionable points. What were you actually saying getting involved with the community? What does that look like to help the guys out there in the estate agency land?
Okay, so I mean, there's lots of different ways in social media you would do it now. Obviously, in those days, it was literally getting involved with the business associations. Maybe we'd run the Easter egg hunt, get involved.
Okay.
People coming round the shops,
Okay.
having the MPs come round and do events.
Good
It
old-fashioned
was more
things.
events. It was a bit more old fashioned,
Okay.
sponsoring schools, getting involved with
Okay.
the schools. A little bit more sort of
Because all
old-fashioned in
social,
those days.
because all social media is just it's just a communication platform. So you can still
Exactly.
do those things, but
Yeah,
online.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you were trundling on quite nicely. When did you open up your second office?
So the second office,
Had Harry joined you by this time?
yeah, just about, yeah. No, Ari had joined, and we were doing very, very well. I would say probably as one of as a single office, you know, it was good. We had our staff, the culture was great, but we were leading by example. We could hear everything that happened, we could see everything that was going on. Um, and the analogy I always use now is, we had a bucket with no holes in it. You know, the larger you grow as an agency, the more holes appear in that bucket, and that's you're sort of firefighting, trying to sort of stop losing that business basically. So it was 2007 we decided to open up. So it was still good, and then it just basically all went to pot when we opened the second office up.
So where was the second office?
The second office is in Haringey.
So you opened up the second office just as we were about to dive into Credit Crunch, which was back end of '07, early '08.
Yes, exactly at that time. So we sort of took our time fixing up the office. We moved in 2008, and I moved to that office. Ari stayed in Palmer's Green. I moved to Haringey, and again, it was like starting from scratch because I was literally on my own. We didn't put loads of staff in there, which had me and another person. So it was almost on ice for a while there. It was pretty tough.
Okay, so was that a deliberate decision because the market was tough and you said, well, I don't want to spend much money?
Yeah, we didn't want to lose money. We were making money. We wanted to carry on making a profit. So we thought there's no point going sort of gung ho and spending all our money until the market improves.
Do you think that was a wise decision at the time?
Probably not, no. I think we should have tried to be a bit more bullish and try to take more market share quicker. I think we had a sort of window of opportunity.
Whilst the other agents were still reeling from the Credit Crunch crash, you could have almost, whilst they were worrying about themselves.
Yeah, I think there's no better time to win market share than when the market's bad, because everyone stops spending, everyone just sort of freezes, and that's when you can be aggressive and take properties from people, because there's properties on the market that haven't sold. There's unhappy vendors, unhappy landlords, and that's the time. It's the easiest time. The hardest time when the market's flying and you can be any old agent and just shove it on Rightmove and sell it, and sellers know this.
So you had two offices during the Credit Crunch. You said that you held back on marketing. You probably do things differently. Is there anything else you do differently?
Up until that point, so we basically did hold back on marketing. That I think we should have been a little bit more bullish, because I think the trajectory could have been a bit steeper. Because it took us probably 2-3 years to become the market leader there.
Okay.
Whereas, I mean, that's still great, don't get me wrong. I'd take that in any of the other offices.
But it only took you a year at the first one.
Yeah, which is,
okay.
I mean...
Do you think that was... The fact is that the two of you and Ari, were together at your first office, so you worked off well at each other, and then you went to two offices, and then you almost watered it down because one was at one and one was at the other.
Yeah, we still managed to keep the same sort of systems and
Okay.
processes at the second office. I think the second office it was still working because we almost still worked as one
Okay.
company. It was the third office when we started having the problems.
It's amazing that so many people I talk to, it's always the third office that's
Yeah.
the problem office. So when did you open up your third office?
So we opened up the third office in 2014, and that was in Highbury.
Okay,
And
so that's quite a gap between this opening the
yeah,
second and
so
the third.
there was a
Why,
gap.
why was there why did you hold back? Because let's be frank, 11, 12 and 13 were bloody good years for estate
They
agency.
were, and during those years, we were looking at acquisitions. So we were fixated on acquisitions, and it was just we wasted a lot of time on acquisitions that didn't happen, didn't materialise for various reasons. So we probably wasted like a couple of years there because we were trying to sort of double our size by acquiring people
Checkbook
sort of the
estate
same
agents.
size as us, basically, because we were fortunate and we were in a good position. But then we just sort of gave up on that. Thought, right, let's just
Were
open
the
up.
firms just not out there for sale, or were they wanting
They
stupid
were,
money? Or...
but for various reasons, you'd look into something, do your due diligence, and it wasn't what you thought. It was an absolute mess, or the goalposts would change because the market was increasing, and it would just drag on, and we just sort of lost our patience and just said, right, let's just open a fresh start, basically.
Okay, so where was the third office?
Highbury.
Highbury.
Highbury was the third office. We'd already started operating in Highbury, so I mean, we did everything right because we maximised the two offices we had, and something I'd say to people looking to expand and scale up, and it's something that Dale from Romans and Iain White would always say: you have to squeeze the lemon. I remember him saying it and thinking, it's not that important, but you do. It is
What do you
important.
mean by you have to squeeze the lemon?
I mean, you have to get the maximum out of your area. So do what you can to increase your market share to the point where you think you can't do much more in that particular area. And because if you don't, then you're just spreading yourself too thinly.
Do you think? I mean, there's a lot of estate agents out there that get to like 4, 5, 6%. They're in, they're in the top 3 or 4, and then I often see them go and open another office. When in reality, what you're telling me there is get to number 1 and become unassailable before you move to the next one.
I think so, yes. And I think high street, and now, my view would be totally different. I think now I look at a high street office as a billboard. I don't look at it, I'm not restricted to an area because I've got a high street office now. And that's how we operate now going forward.
Okay. So talk to me about the challenges of the third office.
So the third office, it was obviously you're scaling up. So we knew that we had to scale up and we had to have our processes extremely tight. So we worked very, very hard on our processes. The problem is, me and Harry weren't there. We're 2 people and we have 3 offices, so we can't be everywhere. So, if you don't have the right culture, your processes will last for a certain amount of time because you're relying still on people to implement on those processes.
Interestingly, someone said to me that you should almost should only open up another office if you can get another mini me.
Yes.
Was the manager of the third office a mini me? Someone you've brought in yourself?
No. The manager of the third office was someone that had worked for us, was a very, very good estate agent, and he's still a good estate agent, I'm sure. He no longer works for us, but he didn't have that commitment or experience to be able to push that office forward. So we had to change teams a couple of times, unfortunately.
But surely an employee's never going to be as good as a boss, are they?
No. I mean, there's a different level of commitment, obviously. I mean, there are people out there. There are some fantastic people out there.
They're unicorns, aren't they?
Most of them are, yes. But, we've spent a lot of time trying to develop our people and finding the right people. And the right person 6, 7 years ago is different to the right person now as well. That's changed as well.
let's just press pause on the story. What makes a good person today? You know.
Today, right now,
Mm,
I think number one, you have to be moldable or coachable, I would say. So if you're not, if you know, if you're someone that thinks they know everything and is not willing to learn and have that self-development, for me, that's a no-no. That's why really people from outside the industry um, usually do better.
that's interesting. I actually agree with you that
From a negotiator point of view, definitely. You know, we've got our best negotiators. We've trained them from scratch.
do you think we as an industry train enough?
No, definitely not. I think that is one of my sort of bugbears within the industry. Definitely nowhere near enough.
Isn't it interesting that that there are 12 to 13,000 independent companies, estate agents? You're not talking about offices, but independent estate agents. Yet, no, not many people can get above two hands on the number of trainers there are that people know.
Exactly.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's one thing that we did early on. So from 2011, and it was for me personally, I wanted to. I always had the attitude: if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to be an estate agent, um, I want to be the best. Really, I want to, or try to be the best version of myself that I can be. And it was nothing to do with awards. It was myself. You know, I always felt in the beginning. I thought, not. I felt a little bit. Probably for the first 2 3 years, I didn't say I was an estate agent. I still said I was an accountant, to be honest with you. And it wasn't until I built the business up to probably two offices that I actually was proud to say I was an estate agent. But I think that was to my detriment because it was a bit of an ego thing. I wanted to grow the business probably too big too quickly.
Do you think there's a certain amount of ego with making estate agents think than a bigger number of offices?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I speak to agents now that have got one office and like very, very good offices. And I always tell them the mistakes I made. If I could go back, I definitely wouldn't, I'd do things differently.
Where
Definitely.
have you stopped your office growth?
I would have looked more carefully at stats and what
You're an
those
accountant,
areas
you
what
should
those
know
areas are doing. So I did, but I used my sort of gut feeling, and Highbury was a little bit of I did it because I felt like I should have gone to Highbury because of the Arsenal connection. We basically we used to sit in the West Stand and talk about that was our meeting. Our meetings were at the Arsenal, and then a few years later we were selling properties there.
Do you think you let your emotions get in the way?
100%, yeah, for the Highbury office, I think, because it ended up just being a sort of a head office, not a lot of footfall, and most of the operations now, or all the operations now, frontline people are all based in Haringey because it's not a billboard, it's not a busy high street,
Okay.
and we still do fantastic business there with no presence really.
So when did you open your fourth and fifth offices?
So the fourth office, that was the creme de la creme of timing. That was Brexit. That was a bit different because we were looking at acquisitions. So we approached quite a few agencies, and then we did a deal with another agency, Hornsey Agencies, who are an existing agency. They're the oldest agency in Crouch End, and we formed a partnership with them.
Okay.
So that was the fourth office, and that was in 2016. And the latest office, Cockfosters, which is a different model. It's like the sort of the Australian model, office above shops, big office there. So it's more of a hub model, and that was 2 weeks before lockdown.
When you say a hub model, are the people that work there employed or self-employed?
At the moment, they're employed. My aim when I went there was to look at the self-employed as well. I think people are. I don't think there's there's a perfect self-employed model,
I agree.
and I've looked at that in detail. I think you have to find the right person, and the right person may not be the right person for someone else. It might be the right person for me, but they may not be the right person for another business. That person has to fit my culture. So that's the number one most important thing. And then you've got to almost build a model that suits that person and suits you. It's almost impossible, to be honest with you. And you know, I've spoken to lots of different people that have done the self-employed model, and I've almost got there, but I haven't found the right people to do it. I think I will go down that route. It's something that we're looking at. Probably wait for the market to sort of settle, and know, and you know, so that we can plan a bit better going forward. Definitely something I'm looking at the moment. We're looking at areas. So we're not looking at high street offices anymore. We've got a big office, and we're looking at that location serving 5 or 6 locations.
It's at the end of the tube line, so you should be okay on that one.
Well, exactly, yeah. And we're sort of going into Hertfordshire, basically. That's where we're looking at now.
So, how was lockdown for you and your agency?
It was terrible, to be honest. That was probably personally my lowest point.
Why is that?
Well, I got the virus.
Okay.
I got the virus. And I got it quite bad, to be honest. So I was really careful because my wife was actually quite vulnerable. But I ended up feeling not well, had some sort of pains in my back. And I said to my wife, you know what, I'm going to go up in the loft and sort of isolate for 7 days, just in case. And at the time I thought, this is going to be a holiday. You know, I'm going to relax. I took my laptop up there, my iPad, and I thought, right, it was just before lockdown, but we knew where we were going. We'd partially already shut down. And I think naturally lockdown had just happened. And I thought, right, I'm going to plan. I'm going to sort of look at the business. I'm going to see what costs we can cut. And I'm going to go up in the loft and do all this. And after 3 days, I felt like crap. After 5 days, it was like 10 times flu. So day 5 to day 8 was very bad. But I felt on day 8, I was getting a little bit better. I had like a bad fever. But then on day 9, it basically went in my lungs. So I got pneumonia. And my wife was like, you've got to go to hospital. I was like, no, don't want to go to hospital. I've seen on Sky News, you know, you've got 50% chance if you go on a ventilator. So I was like, I don't want to go. And at that point, I was at the fittest I've ever been in my life. I was going to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, super fit, no underlying health issues. And I was like feeling sorry for myself, thinking, why have I got it so bad? Ended up going to hospital, had all the checks, all the tests. You know, I was ECG, my blood's taken. Fortunately, my oxygen levels were okay. They were acceptable. So it was a horrible experience. You know, something I'll never forget going into hospital at that time because it was the peak. It was the end of March. Lots of people sick, and I just wanted to get out of there, to be honest. And they said to me, look, you can be admitted and we can monitor you, or you can take this sort of the antibiotics for the bacterial pneumonia I had, and you can try and get better at home and then phone an ambulance. As soon as they said that, I was mid-sentence, I was out of there, went home, but obviously I'd used all my energy up. To cut a long story short, a couple of ambulances later, I was okay. I stayed at home, didn't have to go on oxygen levels, didn't have to go get oxygen, didn't have to go on a ventilator. I was fortunate. There's people I know that were not so fortunate, unfortunately. So that was, for me, very, very tough mentally.
Do you think if you hadn't been so healthy, you would be here today?
I don't know. I do think about that. On one hand, I felt sorry for myself at the time because, you know, obviously when you're cooped up for 3-4 weeks in a room, it is hard mentally. And I'm, you know, mentally I'm strong. I'm always focused. I know what I want. But that was hard. That was a test, I have to say. And I did feel sorry for myself. But then on the other hand, I thought, well, you know, maybe I was, it was because I was in a good place and I took that time to work on myself. You know, if I wasn't so healthy, maybe I wouldn't. So it has changed the way I think slightly. I
In a
did
good
think
way?
to myself, yeah, I mean, I did think to myself, all right, there's no way I'm going to go back to working at the level and intensity I was. Um,
Is,
but
is,
I'm now working twice as hard because I'm thinking, I've gone back to that basically.
is your wife still in law?
No, no,
Okay.
she's actually,
Because how many kids have you got? Have you
I've got
children?
two kids, 11-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl.
How did they cope with the fact that father was their hero? You
Well,
know,
to be honest, my wife sort of shielded them from it quite well. They just got on with it. I could hear my son playing Fortnite downstairs. He was oblivious to it, so he was okay.
you know that your family caught COVID off you.
No, and that was none of them called it, and that was quite rare because when I subsequently went and got uh, the antibody test, which I had the antibodies, and my wife did, and she was hoping she had them, but she didn't, so she didn't have it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a tough time.
Okay, so coming out the other side, you said that you looked at your, my words, work-life balance, and you reflected on your life. So why are you working? Why are you running around like headless chicken now?
Um, we did it. I did step back and I did look at the business again. I know a lot of people say, oh, we took time to sort of reimagine the business and see how things are going to work in the future. And I do think the industry is really, really changing. But I also think, we've lost 3, 4 months and we've got record amounts of people registering and inquiring at the moment. Levels that we've never seen. That is our biggest challenge. Basically, speaking to people in a sort of timely manner.
I mean, how are you sorting out the wheat from the chaff, the good from the bad? Because we are now in towards the end of September 2020. Things are flying around. Everyone's telling me that service levels have dropped because you're just being inundated with inquiries. Are they good inquiries? Bad inquiries? Bit of both?
It's the level of inquiries, the quality is definitely diminished. Definitely in the areas we operate, we're in a very, very sort of high volume area anyway. So we're coming in and we're always chasing our tail. So we've got like 300-400 inquiries to get through, and then the phone's ringing. You're answering the phone. You're trying to book a viewing. You want to qualify that person well, and the key thing that I always say to the staff is, don't rush, qualify correctly, because if you're just picking up the phone, rushing and just going out on that viewing, you're probably showing that property to someone that's not as good as the sort of within the 300-400 inquiries that you have. So we've got to try and get through those 300-400 inquiries, and we've been very, very rigid, even more rigid now with the structure of the diary, because we want to make sure that
How
everyone
are you
gets through.
sorting that out? I mean, some agents are saying that they're unless you're in a position to proceed, they're not doing the viewing.
Yes, we're more strict. We're much more strict with our ability to take people out. So we're analysing their financial situation, because it's harder to get a mortgage now. If you don't have a 20% deposit, to be honest, you're unlikely to be proceedable in the areas we operate.
So one tip that you're saying to estate agents out there is actually don't just take name and number. What percentage deposit are you?
I think you should, yeah. I think you need to know. You need to
How
know.
are you
You need to
letting-
qualify them.
How are you letting those people down? The ones that have got 10% deposit. How are you saying, sorry, I can't do the viewing?
Well, we're trying to help them. We are trying to help them. We do try to get them to speak to our broker, but at the end of the day, we're only, we only have a certain amount of resources. So at the moment, we could probably have double the amount of people, but to service the customers we have.
Are you tempted to take more people on, or are you worried about what's going to happen next year?
No, I am worried. Yes, I think that we have taken certain people on in certain aspects of the business, especially lettings, which we think won't be affected as much. We do think that, we're hoping there won't be as much sort of interruption, but you have to be cautious. You have to plan for the worst. That's one thing that this has taught us. you have to be prepared. So we are prepared in the event of, say, another mini lockdown or the bad news coming out in possibly November. I'm pretty sure, the biggest threat to the market right now is bad news from the media. The market is hot right now. We still have loads of inquiries. We're doing record amounts of sales. But
You're getting through to exchange now, haven't you?
well, exactly. That's the most important thing. We've got the biggest pipeline we've ever had. We've got the most inquiries we've ever had. We're doing the most sales we've ever had. But we're not doing the most exchanges we've ever had. And that's hopefully that will start and that will go through in the lean months. We brought through everyone back from furlough very, very quickly because I was of the opinion that we need to get those sales in quickly because they're going to be exchanging in October, November. And if we didn't do that, we'd be in a position where possibly we had no sales and no pipeline.
What are your plans for 2021 if the market does harden?
I think we're already prepared for 2021. I think the business model that we've sort of adopted now is quite flexible in terms of scalability.
Okay.
And we've looked at we're fortunate now that we've got some fantastic prop tech that can help us in terms of automation. So I think automation is very, very important. But then there's not a sort of one size fits all for every agency. If you're a high volume business, then you should look at automation. You should look at sort of streamlining your processes. If you're a boutique agency that deals with just a few people and it's all about relationships, then you shouldn't. Then you're relying on your people. We have very high volumes. We can't just rely on our people. We need tech, but we still need the right people, because if you don't have the right people and you've just got the tech, it still doesn't work. And I think a lot of agencies I've seen, they've made mistakes over the last 4 or 5 years. Any tech out there, they're just trying it. They're just bringing on all this tech, and all that does, it just muddies the water. It just dilutes their actual service, and it gives the agents within the office an opportunity to hide behind tech, whether it's your CRM or something else.
Well, we'll talk about that in another video. I want to say thank you for your time today. The one final question I'd like to ask you is, what are you most grateful for now at this moment in time?
Right now, I'm grateful for my family, my health. I'm fortunate. I'm in a fantastic position. We've grown. We've got a good business. I've realised that I've got fantastic friends around me, and a bit of advice I'd say to people is, don't take that for granted. Don't think, all right, I'll call them next week, or I'll see them next month, because this period has taught us, and it sounds a bit dramatic, but you don't know how long you've got left. I know people that, there's a lot of people that don't know anyone that's been affected by COVID. I know 3 people that have passed away. So it's come into my life, and it does make me think differently now. And my mum will be watching this and she'll be saying, well, you better bloody ring me then. Why don't you ring me? I'm sure she's watching and she'll be saying that. So I'm sure she'll remind me. So ring your mum, basically. That's my advice.
Charlie Perdios, thank you for your time today. And I hope you boys and girls out there in estate agency land have learned something from what is one of the best known and most awarded estate agents in London. And I hope you've learned from what Charlie's done so you can have a better life yourself. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Christopher.